Everybody ready? Yep.
Bit louder.
A bit louder, she said. Yes. Good evening and welcome to East Devon District Council's joint meeting of the Scrutiny Committee and Overview Committee. Today, the 10th of December 2024. I am your chair this evening, Councillor Mike Goodman, and the vice chair for this joint meeting is the chair of the Overview Committee, Councillor Anne Hall. The meeting is being recorded and is live on the Council's YouTube channel. There's no fire alarms anticipated this evening. If the fire alarm sounds, please leave the building through the nearest fire exit by following the green running man signs above the doors and make your way to the rear of the car park. The organiser of the meeting will tell you when it is safe to return. Please make sure all phones are either muted or switched off. All councillors have been sent the agenda and the papers for today's meeting. And any members of the public who wish to follow this meeting, the agenda is on www.eastdevon.gov.uk. We will now start this meeting by doing a roll call of committee members present. Can you please now unmute your microphones, and when you hear your name, please confirm by saying present. When you have confirmed you are present, please mute your microphone. So, Sarah, can I hand over to you, please?
Thank you. Councillor Barlow, please.
Present, nothing to declare.
Thank you. Councillor Bloxham.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Jenny Brown.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Chapman.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Goodman.
Present.
Councillor Anne Hall.
Present.
And Councillor Matt Hall, please.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Hartnell. Councillor Heath.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Johns.
Present, thank you.
Councillor Levine.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor McKinder.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Toy. Councillor Wibley. Councillor Aurora Bailey.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Brian Bailey.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Blakey.
Present.
Councillor Fernley. Councillor Haggerty. Councillor Heath. Sorry, I've already said Councillor Heath. I know you're here. Councillor Martin.
Here, thank you.
Thank you.
Should be down here.
Councillor Vidal.
Come into here.
And Councillor Wilson. Okay, I can confirm that we're quorate, Chair.
Councillor Loudon?
Councillor Fernley is elect.
Thank you. Now, we've got some members on the outside. How many have we got of the committee? 1, 2, 3. Could we? You're not going to quite fit in, are you? Oh, okay. Well, I'll remember to come to the committee there. Thank you. So, agenda item 1, minutes of the previous meeting, I'm sure you can remember this, was on the 11th of January 2024, pages 3 to 13. Does anyone have any comments on the minutes of the previous meeting on the 11th? Or are you happy for me to agree them and for you to agree them? Yes, okay, I will sign those later. Agenda item 2, apologies. Have we got any apologies? I've got 2 here.
Yes, apologies from Councillor Davey and Councillor Dumper.
Thank you. Now, do any...
Sorry, Chair.
And
I've also got Joe Wibley and Andrew Toy. Thank you.
thank you. Do any members of the committee have any declarations? Please state your declaration, including which agenda item your declaration relates to. State what exactly the interest is and the specific type of interest you are declaring. Are there any councillors in this meeting who want to declare an interest in any items listed on the agenda that may affect their ability to remain in the meeting? Can I take outside the meeting first of all, outside the committee? No, inside?
Would being on the Housing Review Board affect anything?
No.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Would having family members living in East Devon District Council family properties have anything to do with it?
I'm not sure I've signed in, but because it's only high-level service plans, no, I'm happy. You don't need to declare any interest.
Thank you. Now, there are no members of the public registered to speak at the time of writing. Does that stay the same? No member of the public? Fine. So let's go on to agenda item 5, matters of urgency. There are none. Item 6, confidential exempt items. There are none. Now we go on to item 7, which is the key directive plans. And before I hand over to Simon to open this up and give some explanation, what I would say is I think that all those that have read these plans should be very proud of what our officers are trying to achieve this coming year. I thought they're really detailed plans. Now we've got to find ways of implementing them in 2025 to 2028. But I thought they were very comprehensive plans, and I'd like to thank the officers and the Directorate for producing such comprehensive plans. So before we get into the detail, can I ask Simon to speak? Or Simon, then Tracy, or Tracy, then Simon?
Tracy and Simon. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. I think just from my point of view, what we want to share with you today is the Directorate service plans that have been produced by the officers. The plans have been aligned directly to the council plan, which you as members have signed off and agreed to as our work plan throughout the next 4 years. So what we are bringing with you today is the operational delivery of that, which I haven't done in a local authority before. Normally your service or directorate plans would be managed and monitored by officers and then align to the wider council plan. So what we're doing today is we're sharing those directorate plans with you for your information so you're fully aware of them, and the fact that they will align to the finance element that obviously Simon will be bringing later, early next year. And the other thing that we have done with the Directorate Service Plan, which is the operational delivery of the services, that, Mike, I absolutely agree, there's so much in there, and it does demonstrate the level of work that the officers will be delivering over the next 4 years, because what we wanted to do was to share with you how those directorate plans align to the council plan. So you will see within them the council plan objectives that we will be bringing back to you to demonstrate the delivery of the objectives and the goals. And then the assistant directors and the directors will ensure that the more detailed operational delivery within the directorate plans are delivered through their service manager, their team manager meetings. So I'll just pass over to Simon so that he can talk you through the relationship between the directorate plans, the council plans, and the finance element.
Thank you, Chief Exec. So all I really wanted to do is remind both committees, obviously the service plans or directorate plans being put together with officers in terms of the budget implications at the same time. So both the budget and directorate plans have been worked together. They align at the moment. So my plea, I guess, is because we've now separated that process slightly, so you'll get the budget detail coming through January as normal. But at the moment, what you've got in front of you, the funding available has been aligned to our draft plans, draft budgets that you'll see coming through in January. Obviously, it's for you to make your recommendations as you go through these directorate plans to Cabinet, but please bear in mind, in terms of that financial overview, that we've worked to quite tight financial constraints. So the officers involved have had to work to the constraints available in a balanced budget. So please bear that in mind. If there's a huge, I don't know why I keep looking at you, sorry, Kaiser. So please bear that in mind in terms of anything goes in, something must come out, I suppose, in simple terms. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Simon. Before I hand over to Kath and start to look at the Director of Housing and Health to look at her service plan, I'd like to just mention 2 things. One, when you've got questions, can you make sure it's globally, not just in your own ward, because this is a big piece of work, and if we start to look at things that are affecting you individually, we might not be here just today, we might be here after today. So I'd rather they be the big picture things that you ask. We do plan, because we think housing is important, as I say, to do that first. We are going to take 2 5-minute breaks, because this is a lot to take in. So we will stop just before 6:50, and then we will resume again 5 minutes later to make sure everybody's fresh, because these are really important. This is a really important meeting to make sure we've told the services exactly what we want or don't want within their excellent service plan. So I'm going to now hand over to Catherine, wherever she's there. Yes.
Thank you. So to just follow on from what Tracy said, really, just to sort of say this is kind of high level kind of overview really of where we are with the plan for housing and health. What we've tried to do is to bring together obviously the all of the different areas within that directorate to ensure that we're using commonality with this language. It's very clear about where overlap happens and how that work can be dovetailed to kind of streamline our services. And more importantly, or as equally important, I suppose, is how we also work with other departments, so other directorates. So the link between myself and Andy's area is critical, and we're working really hard to make sure that all of our areas are kind of communicating with one another, and to ensure that our plans align. Furthermore, obviously, there's the work that we've been doing, particularly with finance, as a significant piece of work so far, and that a lot of work needs to continue in that area, and also with Mel's area with governance as well. So there's, you know, it's really important, isn't it, that we align all of those things and we keep that communication ongoing. And to be part of that exec team is really positive, because that conversation is free flowing all of the time. Across the directorate, we're looking at how we provide all of our services in a person-centred, trauma-informed way, so that we really strive to understand and meet the needs of every individual. So you'll see a lot of common language through the plan to ensure that that kind of is that, I guess, golden thread, really. With the ultimate aim of making sure, or doing our best to ensure that people are able to lead full lives within their communities and to live in safe, warm and affordable housing. I won't say too much more than that, other than, you know, to kind of just introduce then the other areas. Obviously, I've got the ADs that are available to us today are Matt Blythe and Andy King. And I can talk into some of the other areas once these guys have had an opportunity to talk, give a very brief overview for their areas. So I'll just hand over to Matt now to talk us through environmental health. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you, Catherine. So yes, putting the health into housing and health. Our bit is an interesting area, because environmental health covers some quite operational, public-facing elements of the service, but also some cross-cutting corporate issues as well. So it does make it for an interesting mix. So you'll have seen that we have a wide variety of services that we deliver on the commercial premises, doing food hygiene, health and safety. We do a lot of environmental protection stuff around things like noise and accumulations of rubbish and that sort of thing. We work in private sector housing enforcement, ensuring that we have good housing standards for our private tenants. Things like houses and multiple occupation. We also deal with empty dwellings too. We have things like pest control service. We deal with stray dogs and antisocial behaviour and community safety as well. So a significant amount of operational work that we do out in the community. But then we also have the corporate services that covers things like corporate health and safety. We deal with climate change. We deal with things like safeguarding, emergency planning, business continuity. So quite a different mix of things, but all sort of focusing on the health and safety areas of work. So looking at the areas that we have direct involvement in from a council plan perspective, we have a number of targets regarding empty properties and putting up with a new strategy. We also have a significant piece of work around the climate change strategy. And as members of who were at the previous Scrutiny committee meeting, they'll know that we've been doing quite a lot of work around that, doing the prep work to get that sorted out. In terms of directorate objectives, we're trying to work with our colleagues in estate management to ensure that we've got consistency of approach to things like antisocial behaviour and things like statutory nuisance and public health issues. We're going to try and help bring in a trauma-informed approach to a number of our services within the council, actually accepting that residents and people that we deal with might have gone through trauma in their past and needs to take that into account when we're actually dealing with our services. We think there's an opportunity to give a better service for our residents. We're bringing in a new corporate health and safety management system to make sure that we've got a better control of the risks and hazards that exist within the council for our staff and potentially for our customers as well. And we're doing some work around safeguarding training and looking at some work around whole society resilience, which is an interesting piece of work because that gets us out working with our colleagues in the parishes and towns around climate change, emergency planning, business continuity, supporting our colleagues out there to deliver locally as well. At a service level, we've got quite a bit of work to do this year around things like the public space protection orders. Anyone who's been at Cabinet recently would probably be sick of the sound of those, but we've done quite a bit on those already, and we've got more to do this year. We're going to be carrying out a review of our pest control service, just making sure it's still where we want it to be. We've got a number of enforcement policies that are already in train and will be setting up for review next year. And we're also got a number of unknowns at the minute in terms of the private sector housing offer around the Renters' Rights Bill and also the warmer homes work that we're doing. So a really full year ahead for environmental health, quite challenging year ahead. Thank you.
Good evening. Talk you for a little bit about our regulated housing service and the plan in there. So at a really simple high level, regulated housing service means all of the council-owned housing stock that we deliver across the district. Of course, operationally, that splits out into many different work streams across the teams. So primarily, we have our service in two areas, which is our tenancy services and then our property and asset services. They break down further on our tenancy services side, where we have our rentals team, our sheltered housing, our communities, our estates team, and I've said sheltered housing, haven't I? I nearly repeated myself. And then on the property and asset side, we've got compliance, planned works, adaptations, day-to-day repairs, contract management with our key contractors. So lots of work going on across the various areas to ensure that we are compliant with the regulator and that we're delivering a strategic housing service in line with the council plan. You will see in the directorate plan that our key areas focus around the implementation of that housing management asset strategy, looking at how we have a strategic provision of housing across the district that meets the needs not only of our tenants but also the wider East Devon residents and communities. We want to understand our tenants better with tenant profiling and understanding the needs of our residents. So we can use that data to improve service and target service where it's needed. And of course, continued analysis of our performance against consumer standard requirements, primarily through the tenant satisfaction measures, and being able to monitor and improve the service delivery and how that service is perceived amongst our tenants and the wider communities. And ensuring that we've got a review of all of our housing policy and procedures so that we're compliant, robust, up to date, and that teams are confident in the service that they're delivering and that that is in line with the council goals. And as Matt's already talked about, that kind of cross council really piece of work around embedding that person-centred delivery models using the trauma-informed approach, which is a real golden thread that we view should be at the centre of policy and procedure of our tenant involvement and scrutiny and our service redesigns. Also included within the plan is a plethora of KPIs and goals where we plan to be in the near future.
Thank you very much. Just to kind of talk into some of the statutory services, there's a period of financial uncertainty for statutory housing service due to challenges within Devon County Council's budget. So we are awaiting confirmation on what that will look like and how therefore our services will need to be realigned. We are progressing the digitalisation of Home Safeguard, which many of you will be aware of, also looking at how that can be further developed as an income generator for the authority. We're going out to public consultation on the new draft of the housing strategy, which sets out our priorities for the next 5 years, and that will be supported with an action plan seeking to increase the numbers of residents living in safe, stable and affordable accommodation. We're going to continue to work on reducing our number of spot purchase temporary accommodation placements and use more of our own housing stock. That work is already in train and we're seeing the benefits of that, and we've already reported those and that the work that's progressed in that area. And just last week, it was confirmed that the Homes for Ukraine scheme will continue for another 18 months from April. So we're able to extend those kind of contracts for people, for our staff teams, and we're able to continue to support people, but obviously with a very clear vision as to how we withdraw that support and ensure that people are housed in suitable accommodation and are settled so that we can prevent homelessness and bring stability to these people. We are looking to develop a pathway for single homeless people to enable them to access accommodation with the support and the level of support that they need depending on their individual needs. Again, reiterating this concept of really understanding who we're supporting and how we change the way in which we work to ensure that most people are, everyone is able to access the services that they need. And then finally, we will be reviewing and refreshing our tenancy strategy, which was first adopted in 2017, I believe, to ensure that we and our registered providers make the best use of our affordable housing available within the district. So they're the kind of key headline areas. With regards to development and investment, there's a key piece of work that through nothing other than personal oversight was omitted from the plan, so forgive me, but we will need to be looking at the development and investment strategy as well. So that'll all come in that bigger piece of work, which is already in train, as you know, around our assets and our approach to housing within the district. So I think there's, fair to say, a lot of work ahead. And I think a number of people have commented on the sheer quantity of work in there. However, I think, as has been much talked about, the amount of work that is dependent on another piece of work. So therefore, you know, these things have to come in a kind of a sense of train, really, because so many of them are interlocking and interlinked. And to do any in isolation would probably wouldn't be prudent. So it looks like a lot of work, but we are, I think it's fair to say we're up for the challenge and we understand the work ahead, and we're looking forward to it, excited by it. So thanks, everyone.
Well, thank you. Before I allow this open to people outside the committee, I would actually concur with what you've said, Catherine. It's a phenomenal piece of work that you've put together, your team has put together, and it's in recognition of the amount of work that needs to be done. It's not a question how much it is. It needs all to be done, and we need to support you as a council to achieve that. But thank you for that. I'd like to now open up to those outside the committee to ask any questions on what you've heard this evening or what you read before you came to the meeting. And I'll leave it to the team to answer those questions on housing, please. Who would like to pose any questions? From outside? No? Right, this is going to be good. Right, from you're inside. So if there's none from outside, I will offer it now to those outside. Sorry, inside. Those are coming inside. So, Councillor Young. Levine.
That's right. I answer to any name. And thank you very much for the report. It's comprehensive. I read through it and I fell across a couple of things, but I want to start with something completely different. One of the things that worries me is we're changing the operational structure of the council. And a lot of it depends on software and our computer systems. Are we going to undertake some sort of an upgrade of the computer software to make sure that communications between the teams, between the different sections, are improved, that everybody has access to the information they need? And if I may nitpick, I started reading section 1 and I got into trouble. It says, the following team make up this service. And afterwards, I couldn't work out which were the teams and which were their tasks. So I was wondering if it could be improved a little bit to make it easier for people like me to understand. Thank you.
I can definitely look as to what was causing the confusion and try and work that for you. Absolutely, not a problem. Is it where it says the Housing and Health Directorate includes, and maybe to just kind of keep those as 4 areas and then go into the detail, yeah? Okay, fabulous. Not a problem. We can amend that, yeah, if it makes it clearer. In terms of the software, obviously the new kind of corporate software that we're getting, which will allow us to hold all of our data and be able to kind of see things at a touch of a button, will inevitably improve communications and improve understanding across all teams as to where we are with pieces of work. So absolutely, yes, I see that will be it's a huge important piece of work for us, that kind of corporate, I can't remember the word I want to use now. corporate performance system. Thank you. So, do you know when your mind goes absolutely blank? Sorry. So the corporate. Yeah. But yeah, that will absolutely help us. But similarly, we absolutely need to address how we work as teams just fundamentally. So as an organisation, how do we come together to make sure the right people are around the right table at the right time? And that is a huge piece of work that we're doing at the moment. And we are, in the new year, we're going to be kickstarting that kind of culture group coming together to look at exactly that. So how do our systems, how do our processes, how do our procedures, how do we as individuals best facilitate the most efficient and effective ways of working? So yes, systems are part of that, but they are part of a bigger piece as well, you know, so we need to do it all together to make sure that we are all literally working all in the same direction towards the same common goal. And the one common goal we have is that we have a desire to provide the best possible services to the people of this district. So we just need to kind of come together on that and just make sure that that's in train all the time.
Thank you.
Councillor Bailey?
Thank you, Chair. May I ask Caitlin a question, please? We've been discussed on numerous occasions in planning, and we've been told that we've got hundreds of garages that are in a state of disrepair that aren't being used. And the suggestion was that these garages be demolished and we build affordable or homes for rent on the site. Can you tell me what progress has been made on this, please? If any. Hopefully there is some. Thank you, Chair.
Yep, so not wanting to get into loads of operational stuff at the moment, but essentially that is all going to be part of that kind of strategy management plan. So it will be looking at all of those sites, looking at feasibility and affordability of what we can build in which areas where it's appropriate. So there's a whole piece of work there that needs to come into train, so yeah.
Councillor Johns.
Thank you. On 2.2, it states, implement a new digital platform for home safeguard and install new digital alarms across our supported accommodation. My question is, my understanding is that these systems work on the electricity and do have a battery backup for up to 48 hours. However, I'm aware of people in the area of East Devon with the recent storms that have been out of power for over 72 hours. Is there something in place? Is there a way that the district council check on our vulnerable people if their alarm systems are? I've just got visions of people being trapped on Stanner stairlift somewhere, not being able to get hold of anybody. The other question is, with regards to the housing, etc., I'm aware that presently the district council uses Devon Choice, and anybody who wants to move accommodations, etc., has to fill one of those forms in. I don't know about other councillors, but I've never actually seen one of those forms. Is it possible to do some sort of council training? Because I get questions all the time about it. I'm happy to point them in the direction of officers, etc. But if there was a basic, this is the form, this is how it needs to be filled in kind of presentation you could give us, I think that would be really helpful. Thank you.
In answer to your first question around what happens after a 48-hour period with Home Safeguard, I'm afraid I'm not in a position to be able to give you an answer in terms of, you know, exactly what happens. However, there are safeguards in place that if there are any particular concerns around any vulnerabilities or any people, then there are manual systems in place where, you know, telephone lines are phone called and welfare checks are given. So if I can just kind of give that as a bit of a holding statement, and then if you want more information on that, I can provide that. There also has been a call for more information generally on Home Safeguard and for a kind of workshop to be held so that people understand how Home Safeguard works in more detail. So maybe that's an area that we can cover in that session as well. In terms of the Devon Home Choice form filling, yeah, I mean it's available on our website and on other websites, so it is absolutely out there. And again, it's another area, and if that is something that widespread people felt was needed, we can arrange again another workshop on that. Is absolutely not a problem. If that's going to support you better to support people, then absolutely we'll support you in doing that. So yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I looked through this and I wondered what I was here for. I thought it was brilliant. I think everything you would possibly want doing is there. It's written out. But as usual, the proof of the pudding will be in the eating, won't it? What happens? Will it be delivered? So I am looking forward to everyone working together. In the old days, of course, we would come to the office and we would all work together. Now we've got to work from various different positions, from different places, and we've got to work out how we're doing that. So I will look forward to the KPIs coming back. I will look forward to seeing if we can actually work together to deliver this. It is, when you read it, flawless. I don't really see what we're here to say about it, to be honest, because everything's there. It really is a matter of it being delivered now. So here we are, another year, and we will see in a year's time, and hopefully in quarterly, etc., when these reports come through, exactly where we are. Thank you.
Thank you.
And good luck.
Thank you. And I think I would agree with what Ian said there. I think the reason it's good is because the service recognises what needs to be done and worked very, very hard this last year, and particularly the last few months, to produce that. And I think I can safely say, from my dealings with the housing team, is they're determined to deliver that for our residents. And I think this is a really good start. But you're also right, we now got to deliver. And I'm sure we all want us to help you deliver that, Caitlin. Right, next person to speak is Matt Hall, Councillor Matt Hall.
Thank you, Chair. Two questions, perhaps not quite so upbeat as Councillor Barlow's questions. So I understand and agree to a certain degree that a service plan should be longer than 1 year, and 4 years, fine. But particularly, I think within the Housing and Health Directorate, it's quite a moving feast. Needs change, demands change, IT changes, the whole world potentially changes within that 4 years. And I suppose I'm after some reassurance that there is enough flexibility and understanding within this service plan to allow and to adapt for that. And I suppose the second question is somewhat of a curveball for Mr. Davey. Again, by creating 4-year service plans, you are effectively creating 4-year budgets. I presume you are financing and looking at planning based on there being a consistent demand for finances to pay for these service plans over the coming 4 years. Thank you, Chair.
Yep, so absolutely agree with you. You've got to be agile, you've got to have agility in anything that you put together, and I guess this last year is probably living proof of that need to be agile and responsive. I think absolutely it's a living document. It can't be something that is just produced and then put on a shelf and then we come back in a year telling you how we've performed or not performed, as Ian said, against that. I think for me, this is a document that outlines our first year of work, which I could be fairly realistic in what can be achieved in that year. Do you know what I mean? It's in terms of time frame, but it is within a 4-year council plan. Does that make sense? So it does allow us that opportunity to look at that flexibility and what then maybe goes into training year 2, year 3, or year 4, depending on other things that crop up within that time frame. Some of those things will be hiccups along the way. Some of those things will be things outside of our control that happen unto us. So we just need to be responsive and mindful of them. And it's about that piece for me is the critical piece about being operational and understanding what needs to happen on the ground, but also having that horizon scanning and being mindful of what's coming up and what may come in a bit left field. You know, so it's a bit of those two things really. And your second question was specifically to Simon.
Thank you, Chair. Catherine? Yes. So we have a medium-term financial plan, which actually looks 10 years ahead. Obviously, working with the various services, we try and predict out where the costs are going to hit over that 10-year plan. That is very broad, very rough estimates. Obviously, budgets come back on an annual basis for review. If you could tell me, or anyone in this room could tell me what our settlement's going to be over the next 4 years, then I'll start telling you, yes, we can afford whatever's in these plans over the next 4 years. So it's an annual review, but we have matched out those actions over a period to fit in with the medium-term financial plan.
Can I come back, Chair? Yes, of course. I think that's the key point to my question, that in essence that there is a large set of unknowns when it comes to dealing with council finances. And as I said at the start, although I understand and agree with the need for these plans to be over a number of years, we can potentially tie ourselves to a set of things, we'll call it, that within a short space of time, within that 4 years, actually we can no longer deliver that. And I suppose it was just, again, a little bit about reassurance, a little bit about understanding whether officers foresee these 4 years as has been mentioned by Caitlin, as an ever-evolving document. But I just feel that with local government finance the way it is, we might be tying ourselves in knots.
Yeah, so I think you're raising the right questions. And to be honest, I don't really think I can answer that in that it will be subject to what, so when you get the finance report that's coming through in January, that will set out next year's. We're waiting for the settlement figures to come. We think the date's the 19th of December, but we've got a fair indication of what's likely to be in there to affect our finances next year. This process will go through regularly in terms of monitoring against actions. It's a living document as we've spoken about, but government have indicated fair funding review, business reset, lots of big change for local government finance. That, depending what that picture looks like, we're going to have to come back to you with revised plans, I'm sure, with updates, all sorts of things as we go through the year. All we can present is best knowledge, best efforts at this point in time.
Thank you, Simon. Now, Councillor Heath.
Thank you, Chair. This is probably directed towards Catherine. Sort of referring to the very good question raised by Councillor Brian Bailey, with regards to the unused garages, what timeline are we looking at for discussion and outcomes? Is it going to be 2025? And I say that because bringing these garages, I mean, there's about 15 in Beer, for example, at the top of the village that are unused. If you transfer that to other parts of the district, that's quite a considerable amount of garages. And my view is demolishing them or bringing them back into use would, utilise a lot of income generation for this council, potentially. So I just want a sort of an estimate, really, of what timeline we're looking at, if you can give that. Thank you.
I think to just be really clear, yes, unused garages are part of a piece of work that needs to be considered as part of the wider asset management strategy. I think to not be, I guess, from my perspective, it's about, for me, I need to prioritise spend. And actually, when I'm looking at damp and mould in properties, when I'm looking at works that need to be completed, actually, when you think about justifying demolishing garages and then building and the investment that that is going to take, when you then have to compute how do you balance those priorities, that's why it can't just be done in isolation. It has to be looked at as an overall asset management strategy. And I'm sure if I was spending council funds demolishing garages and building homes for new homes, yes, that would be brilliant and it would be great, but equally it would be done at the expense of something else. And I have to prioritise that agenda. That is no mean feat. So it is not that I am simply, there is a delay happening or I'm not responding to kind of queries and concerns around that. It is purely, how do I manage that whole asset management strategy, which is this piece, as you all know, needs to come back as a whole piece. And the garages are part of that asset management strategy that needs to be put forward, needs to be considered within a 5, 10, 15, 30-year business plan that is affordable for us as a local authority to ensure that we're continuing to be able to provide safe, affordable homes for all across the district. So I just need to just put it into context as to where that fits, really, and the priority of works that need to take place right now in this district.
Thank you. It could just be me. I am blonde. I make apologies for that. On here it says in section 3, we've got service performance indicators, then target and how often, monthly, quarterly, etc. The target isn't filled out on quite a few of them. Am I reading it wrong? Am I not looking in the right place? So for some of them it will say, I don't know, just this one, for example, number of environmental protection formal notices served, including civil penalties, and it just says number. And then other ones, it says number on quite a few of them, or something like that. I'm not sure what I'm looking at, if that makes sense. It's probably just me. I make apologies.
It's me as well.
Oh, okay, it's both of us. I'm just curious, that's all. So, for example, housing, it says successful homeless prevention as a percentage of preventative cases. It just says percentage. So I can't figure out whether we're going the right way or the wrong way because I don't have the figures in front of me, but that could just be me. Thank you.
No, that's not you. Part of the piece of work that we need to undertake next is to engage our teams in how we set targets and what they look like. So basically, the idea is that we are bringing this here as it is now, and then we consult with our teams, get them to engage and kind of really help lead those pieces of work. Because specifically within housing, some of the targets are either being consistently met or consistently not met because the targets aren't right, if that makes sense. So what we need to do now is to look at those, and that's the next piece of work that needs to happen in the new year. So I can also hand over to Matt, because Matt's got a specific response in terms of from a health perspective.
Thank you, Catherine. Yeah, one of the issues that we've got in environment health is a lot of our work is business as usual. So some of the information that we're reporting on here is just pure numbers, because I can't set a target for the number of notices I'm going to serve because I don't know what we're going to come across. And you can't start setting enforcement targets because that was to sort of predispose that you have certain evidence or whatever to do that. So some of those are purely for information purposes. So where that's the case, they just have a number. But where we're trying to meet a target, say the 95% to respond within 5 days, then that's in there. So it's a bit of a mix of performance information, but also just general monitoring information to show the state of the service.
So does that mean that, say, for example, in 3 months, 6 months' time, we'll get another one of these sheets, exactly the same, but with the figures in so we can compare the two quite easily?
Yeah, so basically, as a result of some of the work that we took from the peer review, that part of that advice was involving the staff teams in bringing this together, and we took that on board as an ELT, and that's where the proposal was that we bring these here as today, and then we'll bring them back in, I think we said March, wasn't it, in readiness for the new financial year. I'm looking over to my colleagues.
I'm not. Yes, we did say that. So this is the draft version, so that you get early sight, early doors of what the teams are delivering on a day-to-day basis. That will enable us to then talk with the teams around how we capture the performance, the KPIs, the performance indicators, so that it can be signed off as a formal document early in the new year.
Thanks, Chair. Just another question for Catherine, really. That bigger piece of work on assets, including like the garage sites, etc. Do you have a timeline for that piece of work? Could that come before councillors? Will it go before HRB? Will it come before scrutiny? How will that piece of work come forward, and what input can elected members have on that?
We've talked about it in a number of different meetings now, so the work is in train at the moment. The next phase of this is happening now in January, from January onwards. We're hoping that we'll be back in kind of April sort of time with a kind of detailed plan, or the first stage of those things, with a clear outline as to what needs to happen next. That'll be brought to all of the above, essentially. We're discussing it and have been discussing it in HRB. It will come back again to Cabinet, and it will come back again to full council as and when we're in a position to share that. But we've kind of highlighted that and documented that in a number of different formats now.
The one question I got, you've got an awful lot of measurements down here, that you're going to measure this coming year. In our new performance system, it's going to be crucial for you to record all that. Am I right in saying by doing it quarterly, those performance measures will actually go to the HRB to review and scrutinise, because that's important that somebody's reviewing this going forward?
Yeah, so we at HRB, we do a quarterly performance report, and you're absolutely right, that outlines how we're performing against the targets, where they're set, and we've reviewed that as well. You're right, there's a lot of performance measures, there's a lot of other operational performance measures that we use that don't necessarily mean anything to wider, but they help us in managing the teams and how we're delivering on the ground. So yeah, we've reviewed that to make sure that we're bringing the pertinent performance details to HRB that really kind of highlights how housing are doing, and benchmarking that wider in the sector as well, so we can see where we stand against other local authorities trying to deliver the same.
And also see trends going forward, because a measurement one month may change the next, so it's important to look at the trends. But I think the new performance tool is essential to deliver that. Without that, it's going to make it more challenging. Well, thank you for that. Unless anybody's got any recommendations. Has anybody got any recommendations? I don't hear anything coming from the committee. No, so I would like to thank your team for this work and for coming here today, and we will now move on. We were going to have a break now, but I think we can do one more. So we'll put Andrew in 7B place. So we'll do him and then we'll take a break rather than taking a break twice. So we're over to you, Andrew.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. I'm just going to give a bit of background and context, and then I'm going to hand over to Charlie, Ed and Tim to pick up on some of the detail. So just in terms of the Place Directorate, so it's a relatively recent construct. It brings together 4 key service areas which deliver against all 4 strategic objectives in the council plan. That activity spans from frontline delivery through street scene, for example, through to setting strategic policy, not least through the local plan. And for me, there's a real logic in bringing those service areas together. There are some clear synergies about how we can work together, and some of that fruit, if you like, is already being born from my perspective, and clearly opportunities to work closely together and on a cross-directorate basis, and indeed with our external partners and stakeholders going forward as well. In terms of the kind of key strategic priorities, just to highlight section 2.2 and 10 cross-directorate objectives set out there. There's some clearly some very challenging areas of work in there. Just to give you some examples of that, the recycling and waste service and how we prepare for summer 2026 obviously is critical. The leisure review work, obviously, and how we deliver against the leisure strategy as well, as members will be aware of the ongoing workshops in that respect. And obviously a full day meeting, I think, tomorrow in relation to the local plan, and that being a critical deadline that we need to meet as well, and that heralding, if you like, a new generation of strategic sites, not least a second Newtown. So probably the last point for me is just around, I think, the focus that's already come up around maintaining implementation and delivery. Ultimately, obviously, very, very conscious of the need to be laser focused in terms of making sure we progress, including in conjunction with a new corporate performance system. These are obviously complex pieces of work. They are multifaceted. They have strategic significance for the council more generally, and obviously very conscious of the need to maintain that drumbeat of delivery as we move forward. So thank you. I'll hand over to Charlie.
Thank you, Andy. Good evening, everybody. If I start off with our ecology, trees and countryside teams, the main focus for those 3 specific teams will be meeting our declaration of a nature emergency, which was declared in 2023, and also the new Environment Act duties, which came into force in 2021. So initially, we'll be looking to set up an internal framework and processes to enable the registering of potential habitat banks. This will enable off-site mitigation, and also looking to create a natural credit trading platform, which will help to deliver the negotiated biodiversity net gain mitigations linked to all new developments. We'll also be looking to progress our work on the local nature recovery plan as a supporting authority. This will help to identify our priority habitats and species for restoring and enhancing wildlife in our towns and the wider countryside. This will also be linked to our biodiversity net gain work and also linked to our emerging tree strategy priorities. Members may be aware that we recently received £4.2 million in funding from the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government to deliver the River Acts SAC Special Area of Conservation Local Nutrient Mitigation Scheme. It's a considerable amount of work within that, and not to underestimate the draw on staff resources for doing that for our district ecologist and myself over the coming months. And we'll be coming back to Cabinet with a number of recommendations around how we set up the governance arrangements to be able to administer the scheme. There's going to be a lot of need to draw on some legal advice, and I'll be looking to Mel's team and seeking advice there, just to give Mel a heads up. And also to bring in specific resources, staff resources, to help to deliver the programme scheme over the next 4 to 5 years. That's all being fully funded through the £4.2 million, but it's just the setting up of the framework and the processes that go with it. It's going to be very challenging, and also we're looking to set up a nutrient credit scheme as well. And a lot of work, and this is a theme that will come out in Andy's directorate, will be working in close collaboration with my colleagues in Andy's directorate, particularly Ed's team, and we've been working very closely on this area. It's very important we get this right and work with sort of key partners externally. Members will also be aware, and certainly the Chair has taken a very active interest in the work that we've been doing with our trees, hedges and woodland strategy, and the Chair of the Overview Committee as well, Councillor Hall. We set an ambitious target to meet the 30% canopy target. We're currently around about 21-22%, which is significantly higher than the national average, which is 13%, off the top of my head, 12-13%. So we're well ahead, but there's still a lot of work to be done in terms of meeting our 30% canopy target. We've set ambitions around developing a community tree planting scheme and aligning the outputs with our climate change work. Matt's gone, but working very closely with Matt with ensuring that that's aligned along with our nature recovery work. And also from a planning perspective, we're looking to refresh and revise our current trees and development supplementary planning document as well. So there'll be real bite to the strategy work that we're doing there. And the final area around this service area will be around developing new initiatives and programmes, working very closely with our key partners, particularly National Trust, Devon Wildlife Trust, the Woodland Trust and Clifton Devon Estates, where a lot of the areas that are identified on the service plan won't be done just by ourselves, and the tree strategy is a really good example of that. We can't do that work alone. We're going to have to rely on working with our partners within the district to hit particularly our tree planting targets, our tree canopy targets within our community planting schemes. So a lot of work there to nurture those relationships. Moving quickly on, I know Andy said 2 minutes, I'll probably go about 30 seconds, around our culture and arts development work. You're probably all aware, members, that our culture strategy 2022 to 2031 is our framework for delivering our cultural work, all our investment in our creative arts and cultural activities. The focus very much will be on how we can use culture to help inform our placemaking work, so particularly within Exmouth, where we've identified opportunities to potentially develop new arts and cultural infrastructure, creating a cultural quarter within the town, and looking at how we can develop some modular creative shared workspaces to bring creatives in the town together. So quite a bit of work there. It's very ambitious placemaking agenda, working very closely with Tim's team. I'm looking forward to doing that, and I'm sure we can get some early wins there within that work as well, sitting next obviously to my portfolio holder. I'm sure shares the same ambitions as well. And also the emerging work that, again, within Tim's team around the second new community, about how we can look at creating arts and creative spaces and new infrastructure, cultural infrastructure as part of the placemaking agenda, how those are hard baked into the delivery of the new town, and learning a lot of lessons obviously from the work that we've done within Cranbrook And I know that's a real priority for Andy and within Andy's directors to make sure we achieve that early doors. There's a reference to the culture review, that was within the peer review work, being rather waylaid with the leisure review work. We haven't forgotten about the culture review work. That's on the roadmap for doing that work. We'll be looking to identify where we can generate new revenue streams, looking to how we can further develop our work with festivals, events, and our corporate approach to marketing and promotion, linking with our tourism strategy work. So again, looking to be perhaps more business-minded in terms of how we can develop our cultural outputs. And then finally, really importantly, how we continue to develop our cultural and creative work within our local communities, and really looking to scale that up, which I think touches on everybody within this room, that work we've been doing with our ACE network and our creative East Devon Fund. I'll stop there. I've got so much more to tell you, and I love to tell you, and I'm available at any time of the day to answer any questions that may not be able to answer right here, right now. But a lot of really exciting, and yes, Andy.
2 minutes, Ed.
Thank you, Charlie. Yes, well, members will be relieved to know I'm not going to major on the local plan tonight. I'll save that one for tomorrow's meeting. But I would like to talk about some of the other work my teams are doing, aside from the thousands of planning and building control applications we process every year, and the work of the economic development team in delivering the economic development strategy. There's a couple of key projects I particularly wanted to draw out of the service plan and draw members' attention to. The first one really is about a talent management strategy to address recruitment and retention issues. I think members will be aware we had some real issues in terms of staff shortages, particularly in development management a year, 18 months ago, which thankfully we've managed to resolve, but I want to develop a strategy to ensure those issues don't happen again, and we can retain the skills and knowledge we have within the team moving forward, and have a pipeline of officers coming through and growing within the team. Linked to that, one of the things we've done in recent years, members will be aware, is develop the planning obligations team to deal with CILM 106 issues. And they've been doing a great job in terms of chasing in debts and doing monitoring work in terms of CILM 106. But there's still a lot more work to be done there. We've got an ongoing CIL spend process at the moment, but we've also want to engage more fully with our town and parish councils on a new spend process for Section 106 monies, and start dishing out all of that money that we've been busy collecting in over the last year. And that's part of a wider programme of engagement with town and parish councils that, again, is already underway. We had a really good session in here a couple of weeks ago with town and parish councils, gave them a briefing session on CIL and Section 106 and some changes that are happening within the planning system at the moment. But that needs to be the start of an ongoing process of much greater engagement with them on those issues. And that's another key project within here. At the end of that session, we got some really good suggestions about further training and engagement they would like to see. So we're developing a programme for how we can deliver that moving forwards. The other final thing to mention is we shouldn't forget Cranbrook, still a huge amount of work to do in terms of the delivery of infrastructure and services at Cranbrook. And ensuring we're delivering the town centre improvements and upgrading of the London Road, delivery of schools and other infrastructure, but also the housing, and ensuring that the expansion areas at Cranbrook are delivering the homes we need and helping to address our 5-year housing land supply position, which is crucial to ensuring that the local plan is hopefully found sound at examination when the time comes. So that's a quick run through the key issues for my area. I'll hand over to Tim.
Thank you. Sat next to Andy to avoid being nudged or gagged by for going over my allotted time. I will be very, very brief, Andy. So, asked to pick up on a few top priorities. Really difficult. There are so many. Having said that, so I've picked three, and I'm not going to cover them all now, you'll be pleased to hear, but I've picked three what I would call high priorities that demonstrate the breadth of the work that we do across the service. And I'll also just name drop a couple in that as well. So firstly, I'm going to pick delivery vehicle for Second Newtown. So that was mentioned briefly earlier. I think Charlie stole part of my thunder there. But that's about applying learning from Cranbrook including establishing an assertive delivery model from the outset. And we use those two words, assertive and outset, intentionally within the plan. The work will result in a business case coming forward to then progress, ideally, with support from central government. Just going to name drop a couple of projects that are linked to that. So, well, within that's the same similar sort of remit. So you've got delivery of the Enterprise Zone programme, also the Interconnector project. If there are questions on those projects later, we have Andy here, and I see Naomi has snuck in at the back. Different sort of project now as an example. So this is around placemaking and placemaking strategies for our towns. So it's about developing those strategies and implementing. We talk within the service plan about a roadmap for creating vibrant, inclusive and sustainable communities. We reference the work that we're already undertaking in Exmouth, which we need to bring to fruition. We also reference Seaton and Axminster and the already adopted strategies we have for those towns, and the need to develop strategies for Honiton and Ottery. And there was mention, I think, by Charlie earlier about partnership working, and that's a really good example here with placemaking. Those plans, it's not about us developing a plan for us to deliver. It's about us working with others to enable, and it being a shared plan between ourselves, county, town councils, etc. And then the final area of work I'm just going to touch on is around developing and implementing a new asset management plan. And that's about ensuring assets are fit for purpose, adhere to their climate change commitments, generating income and also capital receipts. And then name dropping a couple of projects that are linked in with that. So you've got the public toilets review, you've got the review of the community asset transfer procedure. And I think that's a particular area that's going to be a real focus over the coming years. You've got the depots review, the accommodation review, and also unlocking of stalled employment sites. I've not been nudged yet, so I'm going to shut up now. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Very happy to take any questions.
First of all, I'm going to repeat what I said to Catherine, really. These service plans are super, to me, are superb. I think they really capture the amount of work you're undergoing this next year and the priorities that you've got to deliver. And I think your team have done a really good job in putting this together. And now we've just got to deliver. And I'm sure with the involvement of all of us to help you deliver, and we can look at climate change, toilets and all the other things, but I think it's important we all work together. But I really commend the service on putting this together. And we shouldn't underestimate as councillors how much work's involved in delivering what you're setting out to deliver over the next year or 2 years. But thank you for that. So I'd first of all open it out to outside the committee. No, they're very quiet, aren't they? So we'll go inside. Councillor Fernie, you need to, have you got any interests at all? Because I need to ask you that question.
Oh, no, I haven't got any of those kind of interests.
I just thought you'd be saying something.
What do you want to know about me? What, have you saw a question? Yeah, no.
Thank you. So, what questions have we? Councillor Barlow, first of all.
Thank you, Chair. Again, a very comprehensive, very long list of wishes. Everything's down there. The only thing I couldn't see was on planning was the enforcement. I am getting lots of people asking me now, why are we bothering with planning when you can just do something, we turn it down, we're supposed to enforce it, we don't. I've asked for it to come to strategic scrutiny, and waiting to hear back from that. I think it's coming to that. But it is something that I think that we need to make sure, because otherwise that undermines the whole point of the planning process. And it's not just Sidmouth that's moaning about this, because everyone I speak to says the same thing, that they have enforcement issues that aren't being enforced. So therefore, why are people bothering doing it? So I think that is very important. The other one, a very small line on tourism, and I just wonder if that is enough. Just one small line, we will. Performance against the tourism strategy action plan. again, that's a big bit of work in itself, but we get one little line here. And I know we've done the strategy, so we've just got to deliver it then. But there's an awful lot here to deliver. And again, yeah, it goes back to the thing. Yeah, is it realistic, or is it just a big old list here that we're putting out there?
I'll answer the first one with regard to enforcement. Andrew Melush and myself are going to talk to Ed to see the best way to develop that, and I think we're going to be inviting Ed to come to an informal meeting to discuss the issues before deciding how to progress that forward. But I understand that you're not the only one that's got a concern with that, but I think we need to understand from the service as well what they see the problem. But I would just use an example of how we work with planning on the 106 and SIL money, and to hear what Ed has said tonight about that. We've got to remember a year, 15 months ago, it wasn't very good. And now we've got parish and town councils coming here for training. They're getting the money, and they are starting to deliver. So, you know, I personally would like to thank the planning service for what they've done to change what we had before 2023 to what we've got now, and thank you. But Ed, we will be talking with Andrew to see how we can move that forward. So I'm now going to move back to Andrew to answer the second question on tourism.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So clearly tourism is a very established and very important sector of the economy. The overall landscape for the tourism sector and how we support it is changing and evolving, including the establishment of the local visitor economy partnership. And I suppose, you know, the point within the service plan is around delivering on that commitment in relation to the tourism strategy. We need to make sure, I think as was highlighted by Katrin earlier, that there's obviously a huge amount of detail within that we need to work through, obviously on a kind of a directorate and service basis, and making sure that in accordance with the kind of monitoring framework, the performance management framework, we provide regular updates on that as well. I do take the point that you know, it's not, our role is primarily enabling, as set out in the tourism strategy. There is a huge agenda there, but it's making sure we maximise that influence, Chair.
You want to come in?
If I may, Chair,
Yes,
just on the enforcement issue, just to highlight that on the bottom of page 25 in the agenda, objective 12 in terms of development management is the review of the operational planning enforcement to ensure that systems and processes are up to date and effective. Mindful that we've seen a massive increase in demand on enforcement services, particularly post-COVID, and appreciate that we're not able at the moment to deliver the level of service that we used to and we strive to do. So we want to look at the systems and processes. How can we prioritise cases that are particularly important to the community? More, how can we make sure we've got the resources that we need, not just in terms of planning enforcement, but also on the legal side in terms of service and notices that stem from that work as well. So that is all part of the work we envisage doing over the coming year.
Thank you for pointing that. Maybe with Scrutiny, we can work with you to help deliver that, because that will be real good teamwork to do that. So thank you for that, Ed. So, Aurora Bailey?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for the reports. I'd just like to ask a question. With the master plan, have you got the children's parks? Is that all included in all of it? Is there anything about doing up the parks or what's happening in the district, please?
Sorry, the question was the...
Yeah, I just wanted to know, is there any update on what you're going to do with the parks for the children in this master plan?
So sorry, Chair, through you. Yeah. So there is a rolling programme in terms of Dave Cook and the engineering team, and in terms of investing in replacement and renewal. Again, it's not specified in detail here, but that is a substantial investment on behalf of the capital programme. Specific projects were recently debated through the budget setting process as well, so those will come forward throughout the next year. Does that answer your question?
Thank you. This is a very good, thorough report. I quite enjoyed reading it, which is unusual. Two very quick questions. The first one is, as Ian touched on earlier, the tourism, etc. In East Devon, tourism is exceptionally important. As you're aware, a lot of towns are going for coach-friendly status, etc. In Ottery particularly, and I know you don't want to be pernickety about these things, but in Ottery in particular, we've been waiting for coach parking bays to be painted in at the land of Canaan. And I keep emailing asking when they're going to be done, because we're in the process of doing the coach-friendly towns. I don't get any response. So if you could look into that, I'd be really grateful. But the other one is, with reference to this on here, where it says connections to the heating network, the district heating network, it says an additional 4,000 additional homes are going to be put on it. I'm aware through various people on the Cranbrook sites, etc., that every year complain about no hot water, no heating, etc. Can we ensure and assure those residents that the district heating network can take 4,000 additional homes? Because every year without fail, and I'm sure Kim will have seen the same things, this phase or that phase or that phase. I think we're now on phase 7, but all these various phases don't have heating, hot water, etc. I know that with the recent storms, lots of places didn't, but it's every single year. So I'm just concerned that it can't take an additional 4,000 homes.
Thank you, Chair. So it's a very good point. We obviously established, I think, a couple of years ago, a district stakeholder forum, district heating stakeholder forum, precisely because there were concerns over the day-to-day operation, people being left without heat and hot water. And I think the most recent meeting was about a month ago. I'm looking at Councillor Bloxham. And I think there was a pretty good story, actually, in terms of performance. It is heavily scrutinised. E.ON gave a good account of the investment they're making to address some of the lingering issues, including down to the detail around metering and billing, for example. The reference to the 4,000 in the service plan relates to the Cranbrook expansion areas. You'll be aware the interconnector project is designed to provide a bulk supply of low carbon heat. That is to the 2 existing networks. It's around 8,000 homes, but the pipe is deliberately sized in order to be able to provide a bulk supply that will scale up to the full 12,000 ultimately, so the additional 4,000. So that's a very conscious part of the design for that project as well.
Brian.
Thank you, Mike. My concern yet again is about ancient woodland in this plan, if I may address my remarks to Charlie. I understand that the planning department has problems getting numbers, and I can sympathise with the fact that they have to get the numbers. But there's great concern in our area that the numbers that are being suggested in the buffer zone between the built-up area of Exmouth and the Pebblebed Heaths, which contain a fair amount of ancient forest. And I've done a bit of research, and they're definitely ancient forests. They've been there hundreds and hundreds of years. And building has been proposed to be taking place in the greenfield sites between the ancient forests. Well, due to my research, these greenfield sites are essential because they're the ones that contain the springs that keep the forest growing. And if they were drained, the forest would die. So I'm wondering if from your perspective, that if there's anything you could do to safeguard these ancient forests, please. Thank you.
Chair, I'm not. Oh, that's good. I was just going to say, I can prove this because there's obviously links with Ed here, because I'm not aware of the development that you're talking about. Okay, probably best. Thank you, Chair.
So it seems to be all about the numbers at the cost of irreplaceable wildlife and forests. And that's a concern of not only myself, but a tremendous amount of people in Exmouth. So thank you very much. And Andy said get hold of the right person the other week, so the right person is you. Thank you for your advice.
Thank you, Chair. I just thought I might suggest that perhaps this is an issue we could pick up at Strategic Planning Committee from 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. You're all very welcome to join us for an all-day meeting.
If I can get involved, the better.
Thank you, Chair. Is the target date for the master plan and the new town realistic? it seems a bit ambitious. It's talking about summer of 25. We all know the Cranbrook master plan took a lot longer, I think I'd say a number of years, and it wasn't complete in August 24 as is indicated in the report, because as we know it didn't make it by August 24. So could we have that corrected, please, Mr. Wood? Thank you.
Through you, Chair. So yes, we can certainly look at that. I think it's important, when there's a fixed deadline, that we have to meet that. And in relation to the master plan for the second new town, that absolutely exists. And Ed might want to come in, but the deadline for the submission, the Regulation 19 submission version of the plan, needs to include the master plan for the second new town, and hence there's a schedule. We have a consultancy team on board, and I'm confident we will absolutely meet that deadline.
Here's mine. Yeah, I don't want to go back over old ground, but I have a concern over planning enforcement. I know that it's already been alluded to by others, but looking at page 25, point 12, it refers to processes and systems being up to date and so on. There's no mention of an improvement or development of planning enforcement, and I accept what Mr. Davies said about not wanting to sort of move money around or nick things from here to to have to pay for things elsewhere. But it's a real weakness of this authority. Planning enforcement is already woeful, and I'm very concerned that we've got a need to develop a second new town, as well as all the additional development that's going to be necessary to meet central government targets. I'm a little surprised and disappointed that there isn't an emphasis on actually making a major step change and improvement in the provision of planning enforcement. It's a frustration, I think, for most people. Thank you.
Who would like to take that?
Thank you, Chair. I think the only way we would make a step change, as it were, would be through additional staff resource, and I appreciate that that's not necessarily a realistic option. But I think the starting point has to be looking at our systems and processes and seeing how we can maximise the capacity we already have to improve the service that we're delivering as a starting point, and move from there. And I think it's a number of years since we've done that in terms of planning enforcement. Probably about 5 years ago, I think I led a systems thinking review of planning enforcement, and I'm conscious that I think in terms of systems and processes, we've probably strayed from some of the principles we set down then. And obviously things have moved on as well in terms of what we're delivering and how we're delivering it in a sort of post-COVID world as well. So I'm hoping that through reviewing those systems and processes, we can unlock more capacity to deliver a better service through that route, and welcome engagement from the Scrutiny Committee to help to do that. I think my suggestion would be we see what comes out of that and see if we can make that step change using the resources that we have got, bearing in mind that resources are tight, and additional staff isn't always the right answer, even when we can support that. So let's see what we can do with the resources we have first.
Thank you, Ed, and I would agree with you. This is not an easy one to resolve, and I think by getting together a group of people and actually analysing it and working together to find out perhaps what other councils do, but I do know from my own experience in a different authority, enforcement was one of the biggest issues there. So I don't think this is new, but maybe there are some best practices around that we can all learn from, and I think we need to take that away from here to Scrutiny, because it has come up several times tonight, and that's not meant as a criticism of you, Ed. I think it's where we are, but we can get it right, I'm sure, with the right will. Okay. Have got anybody else? Yes. Yeah. Ian?
Thank you, Chair. It's not really a question, I suppose, specifically, but it's Unitary Council. We keep getting told, government's coming up with a scheme, that we're going to be affected by this. Are the officers concerned about that? Is it something that they are obviously aware of, but is it something that fits into this plan anywhere or not.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I suppose I was listening to Catherine earlier, and I suppose I was thinking that there's high levels of volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. But apart from that, everything's simple. You know, so for me, there is, you know, we're obviously all keenly expecting the devolution white paper next week. I believe, and we're starting to see the new county combined authority come into being, the legislation now going through the Houses of Parliament, some recruitment, some of the architecture starting to be established, and that will necessarily be a different tier of governance going forward as well. And I suppose we all need to be mindful of our external context and how we stay in step with that going forward, and how we work. You know, for example, I know that the chair of the LGA was down in this room last Friday as part of the Devon Districts Forum, for example, and a really good discussion about how the Devon districts collectively work together in order to amplify our collective voice, I think, within the architecture as well. So I absolutely get the point that, you know, things will continue to shift around. I'm hoping for some clarity next week in particular, but we need to work collaboratively, particularly with our kind of neighbours and peers, and to think about how we influence those future arrangements going forward, Chair.
Thank you for the summary. I think the word I would get from what you said, and we've all heard the press that it's likely to come out next week, is being collaborative and working together. That's the only way you can actually resolve whatever comes at us. Trying to work against each other won't actually work. So we've got the last one. Yeah, Councillor Levine.
Thank you, Chair. It's a question to Tim Childs. You intrigued me when you said we're going to have an assertive policy for our new town. So what I did was I Googled it. What is an assertive policy? And I got a very interesting answer. It's a statement that outlines one's core values. It can help control anger, stress, and improve coping skills. Would you like to comment?
Through the chair. So stress and anger wasn't when I think they were two words from your definition. They weren't words that I was intending, and I was merely quoting the words within the plan itself. But it's around assertive. It's around brave. Andy, correct me if I'm digging a hole, but it's around brave. It's around bold, and being prepared to make those sort of maybe difficult decisions, but it's to ensure then that we can have a successful delivery and we can learn from Cranbrook. So that was what I took from assertive, rather than necessarily the references to sort of stress and anger. They definitely weren't within my thing. So anyway, I'm going to be quiet now.
Anybody else got any questions they want to ask? No, I don't see any recommendations from anybody needed. Well, I'd like to thank Andy, you and your team for some excellent work. Now we go to phase 2, which is actually developing and delivering it. But thank you very much for an excellent report. My suggestion now is we just break for 5 minutes, come back at 7 o'clock. Then we've got 2 more to do. So I think we should be finished by 10 o'clock at the latest. Thank you. Simon, can I hand over to you to do the finance? Oh, or is Sam going to introduce it?
I've been stitched up here. I'm going to introduce it.
Couldn't have happened to a nicer man.
I think that's a compliment somewhere. So obviously we've got in front of us the finance team's offering for 24-25. I'll be doing the sales pitch. Simon will be doing the detail. So finance team's aiming to collect over £210 million during the year, dealing with many issues around financial reporting, compliance requirements, fraud prevention work, which has been really good during 23-24 and should be better in 24-25. And all the fun of car parking. So the key obviously for the team is just to make sure, get the basics right, and the council can deliver all these other areas that you're hearing amongst the other directorates. A lot of it's all the dull stuff. In the main, you probably don't want to be hearing from the finance team because it normally means something's gone wrong. So there's a lot of ticking over, but there is some exciting work happening. I've been told to use the word exciting. We're leading with anti-poverty work. We've got a pilot going forward next year that's going to be fantastic. We're in the top 3% of council tax collectors in the country, so that's making sure that our revenues are protected. And we've got some upcoming great work on the customer charter. That's my sales pitch done. Over to Simon.
Thank you, Sam. Simon.
Thank you, portfolio holder, and I think perfect. Thank you. So, in terms of the actual plan itself, luckily, I mean, Sam has, portfolio head of finance has highlighted, you know, a lot of it is the cornerstone in terms of providing services and making sure the finances are available, the resources are there for the other great services that we provide. Luckily, within finance, we also have Libby Jarrett in terms of the assistant director and the areas that she covers. So there is some really good stuff in there in terms of more exciting areas. And Sam's already highlighted the anti-poverty work, and we really are leading on that in terms of for other local authorities as well. We're seen as a sort of a beacon in terms of the work we're doing in our resilience team there, and I think members have recognised that. But we've also put things in the district council's network in terms of examples of good working that we've been quoted as. So stuff around that. The customer charter is a key piece as well, that again is being led by the assistant director there, Libby Jarrett again. And that fits in with the culture piece we're doing for the organisation as well, but we haven't actually got a customer charter. What performance should we be expecting? How should we be reacting to and helping customers? All of that piece is actually missing at the moment. So that's being worked on, but not just in isolation, as you'd expect with the sort of the message with these directorate plans that have been presented. It's a cross piece, one team. So although finance is leading on it, it's a workshop that's being driven around the council, and we'll be engaging with members in that as well, quite importantly. Mentioned about anti-poverty, but also the fraud strategy is important to us. So we've got the fraud strategy approved. The delivery plan was approved at the Audit and Governance Committee, and now we're working on that. Which areas for us to look at in terms of protecting the public purse, basically, making sure the money we've got, we're getting in what we should get, but also that we're protecting in terms of being able to use those scarce resources for its proper purpose. True financial sort of outcomes, if you like, in terms of our financial sustainability, so balancing the budget going forward. You know, we're going to be presenting to you a balanced budget for 25-26 across the piece in terms of general fund, housing revenue account. You'll look at the details of that. But as has been highlighted by members of this committee, there is challenges ahead, and we need to keep you informed as, you know, the government has made announcements. We need to keep you informed as those announcements come through, and work with members to keep them informed, knowledgeable, and help us with those options and choices as we go through to 6, 7 onwards in terms of the budget. But the sustainability piece is about how we can work efficiently and effectively, and a bit like Ed Freeman mentioned, let's make sure the resources we have got are working as best we can and delivering what we should be delivering. The only other area I wanted to highlight, and this is perhaps back to my portfolio's comment of being a bit boring, but the statement of accounts. So for the finance team, That's a really big challenge for us. For those members that are aware, of those on audit and governance, but we also took a report through to council in that we've had 2 years of accounts which haven't got an opinion on. The reason being the audit regime in terms of not enough auditors in order to audit accounts, partly for us as well in terms of delays in accounts production. That's something we can't have going forward in terms of stewardship. So we've got to make sure we do our bit in terms of producing accounts on time, and then the auditors need to do their bit in terms of auditing on time. But that's really key, I think, for our finance team going forward. Happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you, Simon. So, first of all, outside the committee and inside the committee. Ian.
Thank you, Chair. Don't want to disappoint. I have 2 questions. So the first one, the second home charges that we're bringing in next year. We've been looking forward to that going forward. Can you confirm, will the town and parish councils be getting their share of that? Will they be getting, so, you know, like Sidmouth, obviously we have quite a few homes in there. Is that coming to us as a bit of a bonus? And, well, not a bonus, but to make provision. And secondly, obviously the HRA, we had a bit of a shock earlier in the year where the budgets ran away. Are we content now that we will be able to be on top of other divisions that might be having the same issue? I know we've looked at the HRA, we've gone that. Have we gone through everything else? Are we happy that we are now in a position where we can sleep easier at night?
So the first question around second homes, that's been built into our tax base. So all parish and town councils have received a notification night before last of what the tax base is for every parish and town in East Devon. That tax base has increased because of second home bonus. So it's in there, and the amount of council tax raised locally by towns and parishes, you have a bigger base now to raise it against because of the second homes. The second question regarding the housing revenue account, and I think it was rather a wider question in terms of the rest of the authority. Budget monitoring is in place, controls are in place, regular reports are coming through. We work very closely with each of the directorates in terms of where we are on budget monitoring during the year. Could there be a surprise in any of the areas? I don't believe so, but I can't guarantee that income might suddenly, we're showing additional income in investments, for example. We're showing under income achievement in planning at the moment, development management. We're tracking how our monitoring works as we track to what we think the year-end position will be, so what will be the effect on our reserves, but there could always be surprises within that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Simon, can I just go back to what you mentioned just now about the audit committee? The swap, I believe, or actually was, I can't remember, Grant Thornton swap, were complaining that the accounting rules are getting so complicated now that it takes a major effort to produce an audit. Are we up to this? Have we got the personnel to deal with that? Because it seems to me to be a big onus on the council to produce its accounts. Not just lack of auditors, but lack of staff in the council could be a problem.
Yes, that's a recognised national risk. In terms of local authorities' accounts are overcomplicated, and only there's a certain number of, there's a limited number of qualified individuals that actually can prepare the accounts, and there's a limited number of qualified accountants that can audit the accounts, and that is really what has become the national problem, whereby there's only a few audit firms in the game, 4 or 5, who are qualified to be able to audit local authorities' accounts, and particularly smaller local authorities really struggle to attract accountants who can produce those accounts. That is recognised, and on two fronts. The Local Government Association is working really hard to attract individuals to the really exciting area of local government finance. But on the other side, there is legislation that has come in that regards the backstop. So because audits have got so far behind, they've drawn a line, which is why we haven't got opinions for 2 years. So they brought everything up to date to say anything that hasn't been audited by this point, we draw a line and you don't get an opinion, and we go forward clean. But what that needs is that second part, because although you've got rid of the backlog, what then stops a backlog happening again? And what needs to happen is a change in the way local authority accounts are produced. And this is my hobby horse in terms of they're meant to be there to as stewardship, as governance arrangements for the council, so a member of the public can pick up a statement of accounts and understand what's going on. I bet no one in East Devon could pick up our accounts and understand what's going on. Very few. So something's not right there in terms of how the legislation set out for public sector local authority accounts. But we are promising, as part of the new regime, papers to come forward to simplify local authority accounts. You do that, it then makes it easier to produce. Yes.
Well, I've just got one, if I may, Simon, and forgive me if it's the wrong place to ask this question, but something that has concerned me for some time is when we put our fees up, whether it be car parking, whether it be licenses, whether it be planning. Is it possible to have a overarching council decision to say, right, we review our prices every other year, every year, and put it up by inflation? Because we've had history of this council putting things up by large amounts because they've not been put up before. And I wonder if it would be helpful for this council to work at that this year, because I think residents understand with inflation things go up, but what they don't like is when it goes up by more than inflation in one go. And I don't know if it sits with you or the services or with everybody.
So through the chair, have you been speaking to our new chief exec?
Hi, Mike.
So one of the things that we were directed to do was produce a fees and charges schedule. So as part of the budget process, this year you'll be getting a schedule with all the fees and charges for the current year and what's proposed for the following year. We'll have to build on that. It will get better. And we put it together for the first time this year. And the sort of remit is around inflation increases, keep pace, and where there's other charges that are nationally driven, like planning fees, still publish them so you can see that they're nationally set. And also it's that overall remit, as I'm being whispered to, about there are some areas that we can maximise in terms of income, and that helps then balance our budgets going forward. So I don't know whether that was a prime question, but thank you, Chair.
I can honestly say no, but I'm glad the chief executive was thinking very similar to me, because I think it's the right thing, and I think it's something I've thought of for some time, and I think it protects both our residents and council. I think it's a win-win, and I think our residents will support it, so I'm pleased to hear that. Right, well, I have got a late call from Vicky.
It's a quick question for me to ask, sort of. So obviously we've decided as a council that we're going to charge second homeowners more council tax, etc. Okay, so my question is that second homes, third homes, fourth homes, etc. for people that buy rental properties and let them out? And also, how do we prove which are the second homes? Because I'm sure we're all aware of people who have the husband's name on one property, the wife's name on another property, and flip between one and the other. Because I know I'm aware of people that during the pandemic went from one home to another, and I'm sure we all are. So how do we prove that so that we can charge them accordingly? Thank you.
So the first question is the properties you're referring to in terms of if you own lots of properties and you're renting them out, they would be under business rates, because that's a business then, basically. So they're all individually assessed, all individually charged. In terms of evasion. We talked about the fraud strategy as being one of the elements in there. We do a lot of work in terms of those areas. We use external information to help substantiate where people's main residents are. There's a whole host of checks carried out around that area.
Yeah, just sorry, on that point, on the businesses. So on the businesses that have more than one property, etc. Are they allowed to, if it's a business with lots of different ones, do they still get their rubbish collected, etc.? Do they, you know, are they using it as thing? Are they getting then rate relief because they're under size of a certain size? They get rate relief off that. So are they avoiding still paying their fair share?
We're getting into quite detailed questions now. So the small business rate relief would only apply if you've just got one property. So if you've got many properties, you can't claim small business rate relief. So that's the question about could you have a reduction, if you like. In terms of businesses, what we have is a Schedule 2 listing. So actually there's a charge for second home properties in terms of collecting refuse that people can apply to, and we make a separate charge for that through Suez at the moment.
So are they paying a fair amount, or is it still cheaper? And do they have an advantage? You know, what I'm saying is, are they pulling their fair weight, or are they not?
I think that's a full assessment that I couldn't make.
Okay, thank you for the question, and thank you, Simon, for that. Now I'm going to move on to the last but not least. I'm going to hand over to Melanie, who's going to talk about the governance.
Thank you. There's probably a reason why I'm last on the list, but and I think the word dull stuff probably could equally apply to mine. But I like to think that the majority of my services underpin good governance in the council, as well as having some frontline services such as leisure and elections and customer complaints. So I'm just going to highlight some of what I see as the main areas of work that we'll be doing over the coming year. So as you know, we're currently reviewing the Constitution with the member constitutional working group, so there'll be lots more to do on that, so we'll be doing that over the coming months. Catherine has already alluded to the cultural piece of work that HR are doing with Catherine, and importantly, the development of our new people strategy, so that will be a big piece of work that we'll be taking forward. We've had a lot of mention of KPIs and performance, and so the new performance system is going to be really critical for us. So rolling that out and embedding that new performance and risk system over the next few months will be really critical to us. As you know, we're going to be doing a member skills audit, so something that the Member Development Working Group are looking at the moment. In terms of staff, growing our own is a key priority for us, and reviewing our leadership and management development, offering both for the senior leadership team and for all of our managers. We've got a huge project for the rollout of SharePoint, which is going to have a significant impact across the organisation. Of course, I've got to mention that we've got a county council election next May, so obviously a key issue for me. Community governance review for Cranbrook, I have to mention, which is a key piece of work. And then, very importantly, and something that I've wanted to progress for some time, is our improved engagement with town and parish councils, which we're moving forward on as we speak. So those are some of the key areas, but happy to take any questions that you have on the whole of the plan.
Thank you, Melanie. I don't think it's dull, because let's be frank, if we don't get this right, then we have a problem as a council. And thank you for all the work you've done in improving our governance, I believe, over the last 6 months, no, a year now, isn't it? And more to follow, and this is what this is saying. Can I open it up to outside the cabinet first? No? So anybody else? Anybody inside? Yes, John.
Yes, thank you, Mike. Just something for Simon. If you want to know the addresses of all second homeowners or holiday homes, just talk to the parish council in Beer. And of course, it's a problem in coastal areas in particular, because it does affect. I try not to be a NIMBY really, but it does affect the culture of coastal communities, the plethora of second homes and holiday homes. I know you have to have some, in fact, I prefer holiday homes because you do get people who, you know, who go into holiday homes. They use the facilities of the village, the second homeowners don't. They get their stuff from Waitrose. So I just thought I'd make that point. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. Can I refer, please, to page 106 overall? It's actually page 14 under section 2.3. Point 34 is to complete a community governance review for Cranbrook. Now, I'm trying not to be too parochial here, by April of 2026. Now, there is a wider context to this. The Town Council actually in Cranbrook asked for the governance review first in 2021. So it's been kicking around for quite some little while now. And this does affect the parishes of Wimple, Rockbeer, Clisthoniton, Broadclist, and also, I think, has a potential impact on the master plan for the new town, for which a master plan is due tomorrow or very, very soon. So for me, suggesting that this report is completed and a decision made by April of 2026 is far too late. Now, I know that the matter is being treated with some urgency, but I think that Parkinson's law can easily come into play here. Parkinson's law basically saying the work will take as long as the time allocated to complete it. And I would like to make a recommendation that that date is brought forward significantly, at least 6 months, and earlier than that, if at all possible, because this is something that is vital to the future development of the expansion zones in Cranbrook, and as I say, to the new town. Thank you.
So fully aware of the importance and the urgency of this. The reason it says April 2026 is that there are certain changes that have to be introduced in April. So if we do a community governance review, which is normally done within 12 months, obviously we're going to endeavour to do it as quickly as we can, but some changes can then not take place until that April. So that's making sure that obviously it covers the entire duration. So I would strongly advise the committee not to bring it forward. Obviously you've got my commitment, and we've got external solicitors who are going to be helping us with that process, and they've been given the brief that this is obviously very urgent for the council, so we need it done as quickly as possible. And we're meeting them, I think it was Monday, was it, Andy? To basically go through that timetable. So we'll then have we'll have a roadmap that you will be able to see. But that's the reason why it's in there, because we can't necessarily implement all changes until an April. So it has to be that timescale. Even if we completed it in 6 months, certain changes take effect in an April. So that's why it's in there. But we will be completing it as quickly as we possibly can.
No, okay, understood. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. I've jotted some notes here, so I hope I can put these together and get them across in an organised form. So I looked at this document, and I've been listening to everybody today who's told us all about their area, their strategic plans for their areas. And it seems to me that we've got some really great people on board now, some really bright professionals, supported by some hardworking teams, which is great that we're at that position now. But as a councillor, when I'm out there and I'm talking to people and I'm looking at Facebook, I don't know if the message is not getting across, but we still seem to be struggling with our reputation. So I'm thinking, is the message not getting over there somehow? Because we're doing some really great stuff here, and I'm sat here listening to this. So I wanted to ask, do we have a way of going out to our community to ask them how we are doing? I noticed that we're talking here about surveys. satisfaction surveys, and we're monitoring our performance. But what are we doing to, to get out there, find out what people really think of us, think of how we're doing, and then coming back to put a strategy together to raise our profile and build our reputation. This is something I'd really like to see, because sometimes I say to people, no, they're great and they're doing a really good job and they've really turned some problematic areas around. But I'd really like to see how we as an organisation can get that message across. And if that's maybe putting a PR strategy together, then I think that would be a really positive thing. Thank you.
If I may, Chair?
Yes, yes.
I think it's a really big question, but there's lots of things that are going on within that. So obviously in terms of our comms, it's really important that we are not being reactive, that we're being very, upfront about these things. So we've done a lot of work in terms of having comms strategies around certain key areas. So getting out those really positive messages, as you say, about all the brilliant things that we're doing as an organisation is part of it. We're going to be devising an engagement strategy. So, engaging more, having potential panels of residents and things like that. So there's a lot of work we can do in relation to that. But there's our branding. There are just so many different facets to that. But all of those are things that we're absolutely looking at.
Hello. So under item 40, I saw ensure collaboration engagement with town and parish councils for district-wide partnerships and services. I'm delighted to see, number 18, regular engagement sessions with town and parish councils, including the provision of training. When I joined the district council and town council in 2019, we had about 2 to 3 weeks of flat-out training, and it was literally almost every day. I wouldn't say it was compulsory, but it was definitely frowned upon if you missed it. At district council, you can't join planning unless you've done the planning training. You can't join licensing unless you've done the licensing training. At town and parish council, you can be co-opted on in the afternoon and attend your first planning meeting that evening and have absolutely no idea what you're doing. If you're lucky, you have a clerk or other councillors that are aware of what is what and can guide you in the right direction. So my question is, and I'm not 100% sure, in 2023, when a lot of new councillors started, did they get the same intense training that I got in 2019? I don't think they did, because I certainly wasn't, and I'm on the town council as well as the district council, I wasn't asked. District council doesn't run it, but I'm just wondering whether or not they had the training. If not, is it something that when the district councillors are doing it, something slightly more open, as it were, could be sent out to the town and parish councils so they're more aware? I'm aware that planning particularly, because I chair town council planning, which is why I don't sit on district council planning. It's one of the many reasons I don't sit on district council planning. I'm aware of what we can and cannot refuse things on. But when I came to that training that you and Ed did, I'm sure that you were as surprised as I was by the amount of town and parish councillors that have no idea what they can and can't refuse work on. And the things that they think they can refuse on, you can't, etc., etc. So I'm delighted to see this, but wondering whether or not there's something more that we could do within our remit.
I think there is a balance to be struck there. So obviously, Devon Association of Local Councils have a key role there and do a lot of the training, and that's why I think all towns and parishes in Devon are members of DALT, but I'm not completely sure of that. So they do a lot, and I think we supplement that. So obviously my code of conduct training session is really critical for towns and parishes. I think we want to come up with an engagement almost strategy with towns and parishes so that it will have your planning sessions, other areas that will be of particular interest to towns and parishes, whether I'm trying to think of examples, but it could be licensing or whatever. So I think we can absolutely do that, but I don't think we can completely cater for the needs of towns and parishes. I think that's where DALC and others also have a critical role.
It's me. I just want to tell you that I really enjoy going to the licensing committee because officers come, they explain things to us in good English, It's understandable, it's comprehensible, and I go out and I feel that I've actually achieved something. When I go to planning, I've got to take a school section full of dictionaries to try and work out what officers are telling me.
Well, I'll pass on your very positive comments about the licensing team, so thank you.
Matt.
Thank you, Chair. Probably a question or a comment to all of the officers which are left. Obviously, bearing in mind what happened on Monday, section 2.3 here, page 12, where it talks about the new laptop environment coming across for all staff. Obviously, with the issues with Global Desktop this last Monday, the amount of lost hours must have been enormous. It's a partly a loaded question. I think it's really important that when these new laptops are handed out to our staff, that they are set up by Strata in a way that allows them to do their job, rather than Strata thinking they're giving the setup that allows them to do the job, because there's quite a difference, and I think it's of benefit to this whole council that those laptops are set up in a way that allows everybody to function the best that they can. Thank you.
I mean, this sort of sits between me and Simon, but at the moment, three of us, I think, on this top table are all trialling the new laptops, and I have to say they're incredibly good. But you're absolutely right. We need to make sure, and I know Strata are doing a lot of work on this, whereby they're hoping that literally a laptop will come out of the box and it will have everything on it that that particular individual needs and is set up for that individual. So they're absolutely, that's what they're working towards. So they're getting us and my digital team and my comms team to basically trial them in the first place, and then we will gradually start rolling them out. So we are the ones that are picking up any teething issues at the moment, making sure that we're feeding that back to them. So they're absolutely considering all of those things. But I'm not going to promise that every IT, the whole IT rollout is going to be perfect, because we all know from experience it never quite works like that. But that they're absolutely, they've got that very much in mind. But I don't know if Simon wants to add anything.
Agree totally. I'd be interested in your question, perhaps after committee, maybe, because I think there's a hint in there somewhere about something we should be looking at. Yeah, thank you.
Ian.
Yeah, I've going back to Melly's point about communication. I think when we brought out about the new communicating, the way members are supposed to report in, and no one knew, not even the portfolio holder for communication seemed to be aware of it either. And I do think that it really is important that not only to outside, but also inside the council that we get. I know we get the once a week thing that has a few bits on it. But I do think that is an area where perhaps more work could be done. And again, as I said, the portfolio holder wasn't aware of it. And for the portfolio holder not to be aware of a pretty major thing that you were communicating, I just thought was unbelievable. And going back to the planning thing, the thing, I always think with town councils, we shouldn't be too tied. It should be, they're there as consultees to put their point of view across so that the planning department can actually, I understand that they don't understand all the rules, but there are so many of them, as Yudi says, but I do think that they should be able to say whatever they think that is annoying their residents, even if it isn't technically a planning matter, because that can make a difference, I think, to the planning department. They should look at that sort of thing.
Thanks, Mike. I have one of these new laptops, so I hope nobody's now going to try and get one and put pressure on EDDC, but it's working very well for me, actually, I have to say, and I like it, so I'm pleased.
How come he's got one? I want one.
He must be a special case.
But I'm not the special one.
Paul, did you put your hand up?
No, I'm still using papyrus and ink. I just wanted to. Sorry, I've missed my chance earlier, Chair. Just wanted to come back on Mel's point earlier about comms and to say how thoroughly and deeply I agree with that. And I do know that it's something that's absolutely on the radar of ELT. We've had some ins and outs in comms over the years, really. We do need to do more, and I think the emphasis needs to be on what we're doing well, and I think tonight has shown how much we're doing well. And I have to say this, had to be frank, and directed at you, Chair, if I may, and that's Chair Mike, not Chair Anne, which is, I think I was disappointed to see some of the coverage, which is obviously leading up to the county election, around our housing service. And I think there's been a certain amount of, what can I say, positioning politically as if problems with the housing service are coming as a great surprise. So I was disappointed with the BBC piece, which I think was last night, centred on Budley. And I'd particularly therefore like to put on record and thank the housing team, Catherine, who was here tonight, for the work they've done. And I think you understand, Chair, because we have tried to explain to you extensively, personally and at meetings, what the challenge is for the housing service, and that in bringing Tracy in, which was still only early autumn last year, and then Catherine more recently, we've got a hold of it. But I think the problem, going to Mel's point, is if we have people inside the council issuing knocking copy outside, then it's very hard for us to communicate what it is we're trying to do. And it is also, and this is the final thing I'd say, frankly, demoralising for our staff. Thanks.
Well, I haven't heard or was part of the spotlight. I will go home and look at it tonight. So what I would like to do, sorry, in last one then.
Oh, I'd just like to comment on that. I mean, I was a little bit shocked when it came on last night and again brought up, but of course it was brought up by a question that was put by the portfolio holder for housing, was the joint one. So I thought it came from the council, which is why I was surprised it was put forward in the first place. And then obviously the press will pick up on it because it's a major item that's on a council thing.
Well, I don't want to carry on this conversation, but I'll look at that, and it certainly didn't come from any of them. Certainly didn't come from me. But yes, John.
Thanks, Mike. I was approached by Miles Davis, the BBC reporter, about 3 weeks ago. And
John,
can I just say, I made it clear that the officers and the council are on top of mould and mildew issues and are working productively to try and curb that. He then went away and obviously couldn't produce anything, could he? Because he had nothing to produce. That's all I'd say.
Okay. Let's move on. Look, before we go to recommendations, I just want to make one comment with somebody who hasn't had any thanks given to her, and that's Jo Avery. I can remember firstly meeting Jo when I first became, she came to Scrutiny for the very first meeting or the second meeting, and we talked then about performance data. And I've been amazed how well she has made sure that she put together, with the help of the CLT and the Cabinet, a way forward. And I welcome the amount of work she's done, and I think she should go on record for the work she has done over this last year. But often those people in the background do all the work, but it's the frontline directors that get all the credit. But I just want to thank you for what you've done.
No, don't go too far.
But what I would just like to do now is that, with your agreement, I would just like to, shall we just go to say that we recommend all these service plans to the Cabinet? Are we all in agreement?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, that's unanimous. The one thing I would just like Andrew to look at, or one of them, is the fact that you've got the numbers in a different order on the Simon. I'll get it right one day. Those that have looked at the targets start with one number and they go to another number and it doesn't run on. If they could put that right, I think that would be helpful. But no, in finishing, I would just like to record to repeat what I said before, and I think it's shown by the quality of the questions that these service plans are really excellent, and we now got to work with the officers to deliver it with Cabinet, to deliver for our residents. And so with that, I'd like to bid you all good night and a safe journey home.
Thank you very much.